So a lot of people have been asking me, what's the best thing for tuning, or how's the best thing for tuning? And the first thing I'm gonna say is, why? Why? That's the first thing I'm gonna say. Welcome to the first video. The first video of how. No, not how. The first video of why. No, not why. The first video of running the ropes for tuning, baby. Not learning. Not even achieving. Okay? Just a scream. Okay? Running the ropes for tuning, man. Just running the ropes. Let's go. So, like I said before, let's go. So, the first tip of tuning, and the first tip that everybody should know with tuning, is you have to buy a car. You have to buy a car. I mean, it's not really basic off of like, whatever kind of brand of vehicle. You can just go to buy any car. So, we're gonna start off small. You know, you buy a car in this game, which I will show you guys where the shop is and what have you. I will break down where to go to buy the vehicles, how to buy the vehicles, etc, etc. But you start off by buying a car. Now, once you buy the car, then you just level up. You know, play the game legitimately, do that type of stuff. You know, play through the campaign, the story. Don't mind my driving. I'm terrible at driving right now. Wink, wink. But you start off by buying a car. Once you buy the car, then it's really just like you playing the game, like getting a feel for the car, knowing what you want for the car, knowing what you want. Rather, if you want the car to slide, you want the car to drift, you want the car to jump, you want the car to take corners smoother, better, etc, etc. Once you get that, like a feel of the car that you brought, or a brand, or a feel of the brand of the vehicle that you brought, then it's just a matter of, okay, I have the car, what do I do? And that is where tuning comes in handy. That's where running the ropes comes into play, because you're running through your list, you're running through YouTube, you're scrolling through, you know, anticipating and panicking. You're like, I don't know what to do. I want to tune for this car, but nobody's posting videos about it. What do I do? Let me go here. Let me go there. Like and it's funny. It is. It's funny. It's hilarious. It is. But you start off by buying a car. So we're gonna go to the dealership really quickly, and I'm gonna show you guys what to do. So what you do is you start off by opening the map. You go to any HQ, doesn't matter where. You can go off-roading HQ. You can go to the Pro Racing HQ, which is over here. You can go to the Freestyling HQ, or you can go to the Street Racing HQ. For this particular video, we're going to go to the Street Racing HQ. Once you arrive, you can drive there, fast travel, enter it, teleport, doesn't matter where. Once you arrive, you're going to see 4 vehicles in front of you. You're going to see a random street car of your choice. You'll see a drag car for drag spec. You'll see a drift car for drift spec. And you'll see a hypercar for hyper spec. What you do is you walk up to the car, you buy it, depending on which kind of car you want, for tuning. That's what we're going to do. So you buy it, and then you're going to go to get inventory by pressing the options button. You're going to click vehicles, and you're going to look for it. Now, sometimes, depending on what kind of car you buy, or depending on how much money, or how much cars you got, will depend on where the car spawns. It'll either spawn all the way down here to the list, it'll spawn all the way to the top of the list. It depends on the performance level of the car that you buy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press options over the car. Right? Once you find it, you're going to click performance, and then you're going to press the touchpad. Now, once you press the touchpad, this is where things get a little interesting. Once you press the touchpad, you get all of these switches, all of these buttons and what have you, all of these, you know, sliders and stuff. Some of them might be locked for you depending on what level you are. Some of them might be unlocked for you depending on what level you are. So like for me, I'm like 9,000 and something. You don't have to be this high to tune. You can be 1,000, you can be 500, you could be level 2 for icon. As long as you reach icon, you have to reach icon. Icon is a necessity. Once you reach that level, which you will see in your if you go to pilot and you go to timeline, once you reach icon, it'll show you. It'll say you successfully reach icon, etc., etc. Okay. Once you reach the icon level, then you can, go here and you'll see all of this stuff. The only stuff that you will be able to touch before you reach icon is the stuff down here at the bottom. You won't be able to touch the stuff like in the middle. Okay, like the rev rear, the sub rev rear, the comp rev rear, the sub front comp, the all of these four. These four will be the only four that you won't be able to touch. These two at the bottom that says front and rear camber, you'll be able to touch those and mess with those. These last two at the bottom, you'll be able to mess with those, but you won't be able to mess with these four unless you're icon. Okay. This one you can mess with depending on what you do. It helps you out with like your braking for like the front rear tires or the the back wheels, whatever the case may be. These four up here, you can touch them however you want, and these two up here, you can mess with them however you want. This is, however, your all-wheel drive sensitivity. So if you mess with it, depending on what you do with it, so like if you bring it up or if you bring it down, it'll depend on if certain wheels of the car will have more all-wheel drive versus the front wheels having more, like less all-wheel drive. It just depends on what you want. This up here is like your aero distribution. Now, some of you might be like, "Oh, but what's aero? What's diff? What does all of this mean?" All of this is basically the neurons of this particular game because it's an arcade game. It's the neurons of how to prep for tuning, not like tuning in IRL. Tuning in this game is the opposite. It's similar to IRL kind of because you have realistic branded vehicles, but like the tuning charts itself are like kind of like off the scaling with tuning. So, and then like the stuff up here, you can touch this stuff as well. You have drift assist, which help you out with better drifting. You have ESP, which causes your car to slide and oversteer, understeer a little bit. You have ABS, which causes your car to lock up a little bit, but not fully. And then you have traction control, which locks up the wheels fully. If you turn traction control off, we'll just do this as a test. If you turn traction control off, right, get loads of wheel spin from the start. So you can drive the car and then you get loads of wheel spin, or you can drive the car and then it doesn't grip. Okay. Now, if you turn traction control on, the car will grip, the tires will grip and tighter and, tightens up grip around corners, around the tarmac, around the asphalt, around the fucking, the dirt, the grass, whatever case may be. For this video, I'm going to show you guys what to do with tuning, where to go with tuning, how to go with tuning, what have you. Now, depending on which vehicle you do, will depend on how you set up the car, and will also like depend on like your preference. Okay, what you want to do mostly is you mostly want to like always. This is a must for every car in this game, every brand in this game, any car, any vehicle, any bike, because the bikes are different as well. Like, well, I'll show you what the bikes do in a minute, but like for cars in general, you always want to do negative camber for the front and the rears. Why? Here's why. Because the more camber you do for the front and rear negative, the more angle and lateral G. The higher the lateral G is on the car, the more angle and more, friction and more cornering and stuff you can get in the corners, depending on what the car is, okay? If you go all the way down and you see like where it says A or B for front and rear, these two basically just stabilize the car, make the car a little bit more stable. You can bring them up for front and rear. If the car is too, loose in the rear, you can bring them up if the car is too loose for the front. Just depends on what you want. Me personally, I normally do them both maxed out because of how I want to stabilize the car depending on what I want. Now, if you mess with the sensitivity here and there, it just depends on like your preference. You could do, I don't know, negative for the stability, or you could do positive for the stability. I normally do positive for both of the stabilities. Ugh, can't speak English today. I normally do both of these positive, and then I normally do both of these negative. Now the suspensions, like I said before, you won't normally be able to touch with these unless it is unless you reach icon level. If you don't reach icon level, you won't be able to touch with these. But since I'm icon, I'll show you what these do. So if you mess with this, right? Let's say we put both of those at positive all the way, and then let's say we leave both of these alone, and then you leave that alone, and then you leave this alone. Now let's say you want to drive into a race, right? Because here's another thing that a lot of people mess out on and not have you. If you go to where it says vanity or visual, right? You see all of these tires, you see all these cosmetics and stuff. You see tire smoke, you see nitrous, you see underglow, window tint, horns, etc., etc. If you go to like vanity and you go to tires, tires is normally 50-50% depending on what game you're playing. This particular game, vanities only, and I say only tires specifically will depend on how the car will operate in corners. So for this video, I'm going to be showing you the difference between what tires do, how they affect the car, what not have you also. So if you look to the right, like as I'm turning like moving my camera and what not have you, if you look at the tires, right, you see like how these particular tires, they look a little wider, not like too much, but a little bit. But if you go to, let's say I wanted to do, let's say I wanted to do the default tires, right? If you look at the default tires and you look at the car, you see like how they're like all tucked in? It depends on like the tires that you pick. If you pick a tire that is like a little bit wider but not too much, the wider the tire, the more axle friction you get with the car. The smaller the tire is will depend on how much wider friction you get with the car. The wider the car, the better you have with turning and what not have you. What I normally do is I normally pick this tire down here. You can go with these if you want. These are like classic asphalt tires. They do the same thing that the original tire does. What I normally do is I normally do these, which are the smooth stretch asphalt tires. These are free. You don't have to do these if you don't want to. You can do whatever kind of tire you want. Once I do that or pick those type of tires, I normally what I do is I will test the tires out. I'll drive the car around, see how it feels. Sometimes it'll be loose, sometimes it'll be stiff. It depends on what you're doing. But as you can see, I only mess with like a couple of settings and the car is like semi-okay. Sometimes it might wobble a little bit. It just depends on the brand or the car that you're using. Sometimes it might stiffen up a little bit. But depending on what you do will depend on how the car responds, how the car reacts, and like performance level. Not like really like stat sheet wise, like with the upgrades, but like kind of like with like on the track wise, like as you're driving it. So like what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to a race really quick. We're gonna go do let's see, let's do this. We'll go over here and do this race right quick. What I normally do is I normally do a race from time to time, depending on what I do to the car, depending on what car I buy. Whatever car I buy, whatever car I use or tune or mess around with, I'll normally mess around with the settings and then drive the car, test the car, see how it feels. If it doesn't fit my liking or my playstyle, I will go back into pro settings and then mess around with everything else. So like we only mess with, if you remember, we only mess with like the camber and the ARBs, and we mess with like maybe like the tires a little bit, but we didn't mess with anything else. But you see like how easy the car is, how smooth it is taking the corners, how easy it is exiting corners. Sometimes you can go in the dirt a little bit. That'll kind of guide you or glide the car a little bit into the corner more. It just depends on what you do. The other thing is like there's a lot of discombobulation with how to go about with the tuning and how to go about with the turning and the handling. Depending on what car you have in this particular game, since this game is like kind of outdated a little bit, will depend on what you have or what you do. I normally mess around with the camber mostly for tuning, and I normally mess around with the ARBs. I don't really touch the suspensions that much. Sometimes I mess with them, sometimes I won't. It just depends on the car. Sometimes people will say, oh, the car's bad, or oh, it's this, or it doesn't grip well, it doesn't do that. That's all because of based off of the tires that you pick with the car And it depends on what you're doing with the car. It also depends on like what you mess around with in the traction controls and the global settings and whatnot have you, and pro settings as well. The other thing that I can show you guys, like if I press options here, is another thing that also helps with tuning, is your controller settings. Depending on which controller settings you have, these are mine. You don't have to copy them. You can if you want. It doesn't matter. It's up to you. I normally switch between these. Okay. Sometimes I'll move these up to 10. Right? Because depending on what controller settings you have will also depend on like how fast the car moves and how sharp and smooth the car is in turning. What I normally do is I'll normally have these down all the way down to 0, and then I'll drive the car and then see how responsive the car is. So since I have them all the way down, you see how the car is like way more responsive. How I can turn the wheel left, right, and it's way more sharper, way more sensitive. Depending on what you do with the controller settings will depend on how the car also handles. Okay. Now, what I also do for these particular settings is I normally maximize this, and then I'll normally bring this like in between 5, or bring this like to like 2. So like normally what I'll do when I'm tuning is I'll count the sliders as I'm tuning. So down here you see like the negative symbol, to the right you see the positive symbol. What I normally do, to the left is -0, to the right is positive 10. Okay, so you go from 0 and then you count positive up 1, 2, 3, etc., until you get to 10. Depending on what you want will depend on what you do. I normally do, for driving, like racing with the cars and bikes and stuff, I normally do positive steering clamping, and then I normally do +2 for steering linearity. If I'm driving like a plane or something, I'll probably do +10 for linearity, and I'll probably do +10 for clamping. Why? Because it stabilizes the plane more. Really, like it just really like depends. Now I do have pro settings for my planes, so like as you can see, I stabilize both of those, and now the car is like kind of still turning, but it's a little bit it's way more stiffer than usual. You see like how it's like fighting me. Sometimes it'll let me turn, sometimes it won't. Like I can take this corner a little bit, I can take this corner a little bit, and then the car is like kind of forcing me to turn, forcing me not to turn. Like it's fighting me a little bit. It's really like personal preference for what you want. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna bring it down. I'm gonna bring down the steering linearity, and then what I would do after I'm bringing that down, I'll finish the race, and then we'll see what happens after that, and then I'll explain everything else after that, and then we'll get out of here. So I'm gonna bring that back down, and then once that's back down, then I can actually go back into driving and a little bit more smoother handling depending on what I have. Now I normally, like as you saw like in the controller settings, you see steering dead zone, you see steering clamping, what have you. Most people, if they have like stick drift and what have you, they'll normally do the steering dead zone, and they'll normally bring the steering dead zone like up to like a 5 or a 2 or 3. Like as they're counting the sliders, they'll move them up or down. It depends on like how much stick drift you have and how much friction of the stick drift that you have. I normally do 0 because I don't have any stick drift. But for some people who have stick drift, I would recommend you either bring it up to maybe like a 2, a 3, a 4, because you still want to turn the vehicle that you're using, but you don't want to turn as much, because you know like the stick drift is going to force you into like a wall or into a tree or something, right? At that point, you only have 2 options. You can either turn the steering dead zone up to fix the stick drift, or to stabilize it a little bit. You can buy a new remote to stabilize and fix the stick drift problem, or you can get a custom remote to change out the joysticks depending on what kind of console or platform you're playing on. But that's really it, really. Like I don't mess around with the tuning too much. Sometimes I mess around with it, sometimes I don't. It's 50-50, but it's really like based off of how you guys drive, how you guys' playing fields are, and how you guys' sensitivities and stuff are. It also depends on the brand of the vehicle that you buy. So just keep that into mind. Now you do need the reach icon in order to mess with the the stuff down here, like the suspensions and stuff down here. But you don't have to mess with these all the time. You never have to touch these at all. Okay, you only need to touch these four at the bottom. These are the only four that you have to mess with at the bottom. So you normally do 0 0 and you normally do 10 10. For the suspensions, if you want the car to like fully be stable, fully handle, fully turn, you have to reach icon, and then I would say maximize all of these suspensions, because it'll make the car easier, more stable for you to control it. If you want the car to be faster, you can mess with the what's this shit? What's it called? You can mess with the diff distribution around a little bit. That'll add a little bit more faster, stats, and it'll actually mess with the stats and make the car a little bit faster, make the car slower. It just depends on what you want. I normally mess around with some of it. I don't mess around with all of it. It just like depends on what you guys want. Um, but besides that, that's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope I could help out to answer the people of my best within my subscriber list, and I will see you guys the next time I post my next summit video. Besides that, I will see you guys later, because I have to prepare for my next summit video, and I have to do a whole bunch of what have you, personal stuff. So take care, guys, and I'm Undetected RT. Subscribe to my channel. Bye, guys. So take care, guys, and I'm Undetected RT. Subscribe to my channel. Bye, guys.